a video letter in under a minute about my story, about what no deal will do to my family. It's impossible. How am I going to tell you all that in under a minute? We moved to the UK in 2014. We scattered my husband's ashes in Cornwall in 2018. My daughter went to school in Cornwall, in Molly to be precise. Started going to school in 2014. She'll do a final year of college in Truro in 2020 when she returns to school. I don't know if I'll see her in person in Cornwall again because I've been diagnosed with cancer and I have treatment here in this country in Holland. She'll be there. I might see her on Zoom, but will she be able to visit me? She applied for settled status in January. We haven't heard. We have no idea what her future is. She wants to stay in the UK. We were told we could stay if we wanted to. I qualify as much as she does, but I don't want to. But she does. She has her future there. But her mum's in Holland, her last remaining parent, and she won't even be able to come and see me because we don't know how long she's allowed out of the country. If there's no deal, how will we go about? Do we need to take out insurance when she comes to visit me? If I come out of a year treatment and I can go back to the caravan that we bought and stay there while she goes to school, what do I do? Can I drive my car over? Can I drive her English car? What kind of insurance do I have to take out, especially seeing as I've got this? We have no idea. There's no idea of what her future will look like. People tell me I should just bring her home to Holland. I can't. She's gone Cornish. She likes bloody black tea with milk. She prefers pasties over our Dutch national dishes. She's just gone rogue, if you like. What about all these children who grew up in the English system? Do they just ditch that? They can't. It's become part of them. Their futures are there. Please, don't leave without a deal. What are you gaining by doing that? You're ruining the lives of so many families. Why? Thank you.
My name's Tom Scott and I'm from Falmouth. And I'm very concerned by reports this morning from the pharmaceutical industry that they have warned the government that supplies of critical medicines and other medical material are extremely low or at zero following the COVID-19 crisis. I have friends and relatives, as most people do, who depend on uninterrupted supplies of these things. I know that at least one of them voted for Brexit, but he certainly did not vote for interruptions to drugs on which his life depends. I very much hope that MPs in Cornwall and around the country will put all the pressure they can on the government to get an extension to the Brexit transition period, because without that, these people's lives are going to be at risk. And we've seen already what a massive crisis there is without proper preparation. A no-deal Brexit has not been properly prepared for, and we need to act very quickly to make sure that disaster is not heaped on top of the current catastrophe.
I'm Roger, I live near Liscard. I urge the government to get an extension in their negotiations with the EU and avoid a no-deal Brexit at all costs. For me, the most pressing issue is climate change and global warming. I think that the UK will be in a much better position to influence the world and make changes if we are working in close cooperation with the EU and we get a deal that aligns our policies with the EU policies on climate change. I'm going to be 70 in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm also concerned about what's going to happen to me when I get older and for my health care and if I need to move into a care home. And we've seen during the pandemic that the NHS and care homes rely heavily on workers from all nationalities, and we need to make sure that the NHS and care homes can continue to operate easily and get the skilled workers that they need in order to make sure that old people are well looked after. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emmanuel. I live in Newquay in Cornwall. This is a message for Steve Double. At a time where you celebrate ending freedom of movement, and we are obviously getting to a no-deal situation at the end of this month, I would like to know how you would like to ensure and safeguard the links to other EU countries for your 18,000 citizens in Cornwall and all their families. How will you make sure that I'm able to travel using the same links as before? How will I be able to afford medical insurance for my family of four and or for my elderly parents to come and visit me? This, of course, does not apply just to EU citizens and their families, but it applies to all British citizens now that you've removed freedom of movement. I feel very strongly about lots of things about Brexit, but this is my message to you today. Thank you.
My name's Gordon. I am the owner of Kitchen Ventilation Systems. We're a company that supports the hospitality trade in southern England. A no-deal Brexit gives us substantial challenges with supply chains coming mainly from European countries, in particular Germany, Sweden, Spain and Italy, with disruption to those supply chains later in the year with a potential WTO hard Brexit with no deal. We will struggle greatly. The USA is certainly not our saviour for this business, and with sterling being weak, our import costs are rising regularly already. Boris, we need an extension. Give us that extension so my business is viable.
My name is Angeline. I have worked for 25 years, comfortable in the knowledge that as an EU citizen, I can move, work, trade my services, live, retire within the European Union as a UK citizen and therefore as an EU citizen. Having lived and worked in France and Spain for many years, I now live in Truro and I translate for Spanish companies, two of which now no longer work with me directly as a result of the UK decision to Brexit and those companies' perception of ensuing difficulties. I have to accept that we are no longer a part of the EU, although I will always believe that the majority of the British people who voted for that were duped into doing so. Nevertheless, we are where we are. Therefore, please ensure that correct, measured, considered negotiations are given the time that they merit to ensure everyone in a similar position to me will be safeguarded by asking for an extension to the transition period and sensibly negotiated agreement. Please do not allow a no-deal Brexit, which will jeopardise European cooperation and structure in medical research, which is the area in which I work, and my ability to continue to work in my area of expertise. Thank you.
I'm Edward Curry. Cherilyn McCrory is my MP. My daughter fled to Germany when Johnson came to power to preserve the rights of her unborn child. As her naturalised husband is of German descent, they both had to sacrifice a lot to do this. She could well be in labour with her first child as I speak. This is her due date and her baby is ready. Brexit and the virus has denied her her own mother's support. Thanks to your government, our granddaughter will be born a German citizen. How do we keep normal contact with our international family, Cherilyn, if the negotiations are bodged by rigidity and impatience? What travel restrictions and visa limitations must we endure? Might we require a visa? And what about return visits? Can you guarantee our granddaughter's access to protection and medical care in her British grandparents' country? Why should we have to pay such a high price for something we didn't even want? Show that you actually care. Ask for an extension.
We run a video company and we are right at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to marketing. So if companies want to cut back on anything at all, it's usually their marketing budget, and if they want to cut back on anything at all in their marketing budget, then it'll be video content and that sort of thing. We've noticed this effect directly after the referendum, and it's been with us pretty much ever since. So we direct our own fortunes commercially directly correlate with levels of business confidence in the economy as a whole.
As a child at school, I went on a trip to Europe and visited the war graves near Arras, and then subsequently I went with my family to Normandy and saw the battle sites and everything there, and where D-Day, the D-Day landings happened and everything like that. And I'd very much like my children to experience that, but obviously the cost of that will be so much higher if we have a no-deal Brexit, and will be so much more difficult in terms of paperwork and just moving children across the border into the rest of Europe.
There's a real danger, isn't there, that subsequent generations, and I'm not just talking about one generation, but maybe whole generations will grow up simply removed from the appalling nature of World War I and World War II, because they can't see it with their own eyes. The schools are really good at the moment. It's included on the curriculum, and they have school trips. And your oldest daughter has been to Berlin and the concentration camps around there, and your oldest son has been to Normandy. But for everyone below that, your youngest two, maybe they'll never see this with their own eyes, and it'll just be a bit of history they learn at school, and with a shrug of the shoulders and go, well, that's nothing to do with me. Let's just very quickly talk about the difficulty of organising school trips to Europe.
I think that obviously now that we will have to, that visas will have to be involved in everything, and things will be more expensive. We won't have any control over that sort of thing. Possibly slower to get into the different countries as well.
Not happen at all if there's no reciprocal healthcare insurance.
Yes, that's true, and it makes it all the more difficult to explain to the children why we've pulled apart from being part of the European Union, and yet, as far as I'm aware, we all share the common goal that we don't ever see wars like that again.
Whenever we go and film in a foreign country, and this obviously would mean any country in the European Union after a no-deal Brexit, we would have to fill in order to take any of our equipment abroad for filming, what's called an international carnet. And these are very expensive and very lengthy forms where you have to fill in all the details of all the equipment. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about the serial numbers of every single item and the cost of every single item, that's to say its value. And in some countries, they even demand the weight. And these forms cost about £650 minimum, if you're taking more equipment, they can cost more. They take a long time to fill out, and then you have to stop at every border. So you have to stop at the exit border from the UK, the entry border to the new country, and then the same again on the way back. And then every item of equipment that you're taking to that country has to be checked by a customs officer and then signed off against the form. And if you've made one mistake, you're turned back. Now, the irony is that although we filmed in Europe many times, one of the bigger trips that we did recently was for the UK government in order to create films to encourage British companies to export. And if we had got to fill in carnets for every time we went across the border, it wouldn't just cost us the £650 minimum, it would also cost us probably a day in our time, which we would value at £750, which is what we charge out at. So you're looking at a massively increased cost for an industry in which the margins are really very small.
So I went on many exchanges, many trips abroad. My godfather is French. I have many friends over in Europe, and I've always loved the freedom that being part of the European Union has given to us, and I now see that is going to break down for our children. So therefore, it will be much more difficult to travel abroad, much more difficult to work abroad, like my sister did for 3 years in Italy. Much more difficult to participate in things that go on as a whole. Now that my son, Lucas, who is 18, has visited the war graves in Normandy, and my daughter Minty has been on a school trip to Berlin and been to a concentration camp and experienced that, realised, quite what war can do in Europe. I would very much like my other children to experience that too. And I can only see that it will be vastly more expensive and more difficult, possibly involving visas and goodness knows what. So the free flow of people back and forth no longer exists or won't exist from now on. So it will be difficult to explain to them quite why that has happened politically, socially, in every way, really. So at school, the children have been learning about the League of Nations and how that started, and how all the different countries came together and wanted to stop war ever happening again in Europe. And they look at me and ask, what on earth has gone wrong here currently with obviously the decision to pull out of something so important to them, their generation, and obviously our generation as well. Well, as a child, I went with my family and my school to the sites of the First World War and the Second World War, and was able to really understand what had brought Europe together as a whole. Obviously, that has managed to protect Europe from subsequent wars, I believe, and obviously now things will be much more difficult for our children to go and do such a thing.
Hi, I'm a retired GP. Steve Waltorton is my name, living in Newquay in Cornwall. I've had a blessed life, no need to fight any wars, unlike my father and grandfather. And Churchill himself said after the Second World War, the means to avoid future warfare is for countries to trade easily, fairly with each other. They become to depend on each other, to get to know each other, and are much less likely to fight each other. This has worked very well for my entire life, and I would like it to work extremely well for my children and grandchildren as well. That is not even looking at the financial disadvantages of not having a good trade agreement. But battles come very easily, and we must avoid them, and we must genuinely remain friends and not just talk about our friends in Europe without meaning a word of it.